In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to WordPress's Options API Codex page. This is what WordPress has to say about the Options API. The Options API is a simple and standardized way of storing data in the database. The API makes it easy to create, access, update, and delete options. All the data is stored in the WP_options table under a given custom name. This page contains the technical documentation needed to use the Options API. To put it simply, it's a way for us to create options for plugins and themes. If you created some web apps, you're probably used to creating a table for your settings. While this may seem appropriate for your own web apps, it's overkill for WordPress. A lot of WordPress sites will have dozens of plugins installed. It would be pretty hard to maintain the database if every plugin and theme created their own set of tables with settings. WordPress has standardized these types of situations by providing the Options API. The Options API will provide an easy way to create, retrieve, update, and delete options and/or settings. Here's what we're going to do. We will create an admin page with settings related to the recipe plugin. The settings will determine whether or not a user has to be registered to create a recipe or rate one. I want you to open the activation file. I'm going to start using the Options API right away. Before we can edit the settings, we need to create them. Create a variable called recipe_opts. This variable's value will be set to the value returned by the function getOption. This is the first function in the Options API. This will simply retrieve the value of an option. The option I want to retrieve is called rOpts. This option doesn't exist, or at least it shouldn't when the user first activates the plugin. If this option doesn't exist, WordPress will return false. Next, inside a conditional statement, I'm going to check if this value is false. It's very important that we do this. If a user deactivates and reactivates this plugin, then we could end up overriding their settings if they previously activated the plugin. At this point, the user is activating the plugin for the first time. I'm going to create an array called opts. This array will have a few key value pairs. I'm going to create two values named rating login required and recipe submission login required. Both values will be set to 1, which will mean no, 2 for yes if the user is required to be logged in to submit or rate a recipe. Now it's time to add the option into the database. We're going to call a function called addOption. This function has two parameters, the name of the option and its value. The name will be rOpts. The value will be the array we just created. One thing I should be clear on is that you don't have to set the option as an array. You can use any value you want. It can be a Boolean, integer, or just a plain string. However, I wanted to use an array as I don't want to create two different options. It's much easier to have one option with an array of values. Now that we're finished, let's deactivate and reactivate this plugin. You should receive no errors. To confirm if the option was saved, open HeidiSQL. I'm going to navigate to the WordPress database and open the WP options table. I know for a fact that this is the table where options are stored because that's what was stated in the documentation. Since I know we just created this option, I can then go to the very last row and see if the rOpts option was created. As you can see, it was created. The value is pretty weird. Don't worry about this. WordPress has to format an array so that it can fit inside the database properly. All our values are serialized during input and then converted back to an array when we need it. In the next few lectures, we'll start creating a page for the plugin settings. This special page will allow users to update the plugin options.